Distant Worlds 2 is a new 4X space game launching in March from Slytherin Games. And in today's video, I'm going to give you my thoughts and impressions of the game after several hours of preview beta gameplay. And I do need to stress it was based on the preview beta build that Slytherin was kind enough to send me. This video is not sponsored, and my opinions are not swayed by the fact that I was able to get an early access code to a preview build. And what I will do is walk you through the features that I really enjoy and talk about some of the stuff that hopefully they will work on in future. So Distant Worlds 2 is a follow-up on the 2010 game Distant Worlds, a strategy 4X space game that did have a very good following. A lot of people also like the modability. Now, of course, since then, we've had Stellaris come onto the scene and absolutely dominate the Space 4X strategy scene. I'm a fan of Stellaris, but I really wanted to highlight Distant Worlds 2 because I always feel like maybe there is something else out there. The great thing about Distant Worlds 2, you have a ton of options on how you build, what type of game to have, and the number of species you can play. As you can see here, there are a number of species that will be launching, with more planned on the way once the game is fully playable and available in March. You have a very in-depth type of mechanic around your government and politics, as well as how you build your ships and military, along with a pretty much autonomous economic system, which is really, really interesting, but one that you have direct input on. Now, there are a few notes from Distant Worlds 2 that I was given when I was given the preview beta key, and some of the things, the main areas that the developers are still working on. They're working on improving the AI further, even though the AI overall was already pretty good. Completing and testing all faction stories, which there will be a lot and very in-depth, which I enjoy. Completing the stories and events for the Hive Mind game thread and the Planet Destroyer late game threat. So yes, that is part of it. Some improvements in messaging, some optimization to limit message spam, and the rare case where two pop-up messages can happen at the same time, so you don't get inundated with a bunch of messages and pop-ups. Then more improved balance for faction victory conditions and faction-wide events. Modding documentation, so this will be a heavily moddable game, which that just expands these games even further. I know that's one thing people love in Stellaris, and what I've heard is that the original Distant Worlds, which I never played, was very moddable, and the goal here is to make this very moddable. So I'm looking forward to, the Star Wars, the Expanse, and Star Trek, and so many other more mods coming to this game. Then, of course, they're going to work on some more bug fixing, performance optimization, and they will have a full game manual and expand the Galactopedia, which is already pretty extensive. So now let's go into a game that I have been playing here on the channel, just to kind of walk you through a little bit about the things that I really enjoy and some of the things that, maybe we'll see of them improving in future. It's a very small dev team that is doing this, published by Slytherin Games, and the fact that it's a very small dev team is extraordinarily impressive. So first things first, we're going to talk about, of course, our graphics and user interface and so on. So the graphics overall, I think, are very, very nice. From detail to spaceships, whether it's spaceships or spaceports, I think it just looks absolutely fantastic, as well as just the overall look and feel of the game. The planets look good, the asteroids look good. If we look at moons and so on, the textures, it all looks really, really good from a graphical viewpoint. If we look at the way characters are made to look, it works fantastically. I mean, it gives you everything you need. It does look a lot like some other 4X games out there, but there's only so much you can really do, but it does not shrink for larger titles with larger development teams. So overall, the user interface is easy to understand and logical. You have everything where you need it with good pop-ups and information panels. I have really no major complaints. I would wish that these kind of maybe work a little quicker, but I know that's something that they're going to improve upon. And they already had an update during the preview that I have, and I noticed some things had already changed. You can also work on your ship design, bring things in, and work on your own ship. Everything is logical. Even here to these icons, you look at where you have your main realm, diplomacy, your characters, your colonies, exploration, resources, construction, research, military, as well as your civilian. So civilian is really important, even though this icon, I think, could be worked on. It's not as, it doesn't scream civilian to me, but civilian ships and economy runs relatively autonomously. Also, depending on the government form you use, it'll become more automated. And automation is one of the things I want to talk about as well. Automation is a big part of this game. You can automate so much just in your policies and your advisors and automation. So you can really just control the things you really want to, or if you are very hands-on, you can just go, well, full manual. And they even have certain configurations. So if you're more into combat or diplomacy, spy master, or do expert and just be manual on everything, you can already set that before. And then of course you've got your custom that you can just change yourself. So automation is a big part of this. But you've got a full economy that you can work on to a degree. You cannot micromanage the economy. Some people may not like that. I really do, because think about it this way. If you are running an empire in any other 4X game or grand strategy game, minutia economic manipulation isn't really something quote unquote realistic. I know talking about realism in these games is always a bit of an abstract, but going into each mining ship and saying you go mine here and you go mine there and you transport cargo and tourists here and there just isn't realistic in that sense. You are setting the course for your empire and your realm, but you are not dictating every little aspect, even though you can get into the weeds here quite detailed. Speaking of detail, this is the research tree, and this is something I really enjoy. I love how they addressed research in Distant Worlds 2. In my opinion, it is my favorite way to do it. Now, the way this tree is set up, maybe you can work on it a little bit, but it does make sense. Graphically, it looks perfectly fine. It gives you all the information you could possibly want or need from something, and it kind of just, many folds across this direction versus top down. It goes left to right, works perfectly. It is very in-depth. I haven't even scratched the surface of this yet. And what I love about this, as someone who's more a non-optimized min-max power gamer, I can set it so that it's random to a degree, of course. I mean, storage and transport research will always be here, but what comes next is dictated by the species you pick, the form of government you pick, the other research you do, and the policies and the money you invest. So what comes next isn't always going to be the same after every playthrough. And you can hide the levels so you only see the next one. So you can't plan the research. You're more surprised. Oh, okay, what comes next? And let's react to that. Some people don't like that. They want a full plan. We're going to go down this exact path of research every time. And you can change that in the settings. You can say no random and fully visible, so you know exactly the tech tree, the research tree to go down every single time. I personally find that boring. I like the slightly random aspect and the fact that I can't see the next one. And honestly, I can't remember what would be next anyway. So having it this way, even if it wasn't random, works perfectly for me. I know once you get 1,000 hours in, you pretty much know everything, but that slight little tweak to randomize it, I think is a huge bonus. I love that. It's one of my favorite things. And I have to say the depth of research within Distant Worlds 2 is one of my absolute favorite things. You can see just how detailed you can get into every single weapon, ship, and so on here, and all the different stats it gives you. Absolutely love it. It gives something for everybody, no matter how in-depth you want to take a look at things. Now, how they work on the military is another thing that I really enjoy. You can go fully automated, and you can set up your slight automation as well as very, very manual. You can create fleets, you can micromanage your fleets, your ground troops, which are very important in this game, and I do like the NATO counters for that, as well as your admirals and generals, your bases, and so on. So it can go very, very in-depth. And one example would be right here in this military ship. You can attach it to different fleets. You can set your automation levels. You can manage your fighters, and you can even set the tactics for every single ship, not just combat ships, but every single ship in the game. You can set the tactical settings for every single ship and how you want to work it. Same goes for exploration. Another thing that I love, you can either automate it or manually select places you want your exploration ships to go. So it is a really fun and good system. Now, the vastness of Distant Worlds 2, and this is just on standard settings, you can make this even more impressive, is something that I really, really enjoy. A bunch of hours into the game already as far as preview build hours go, with limited content, and we've barely scratched the surface of surrounding systems within our galaxy. And then this is just a standard size galaxy. Now imagine you would go to a much larger galaxy, and just how much game content you can see over time. It looks great, it feels great, it's intuitive, and you can build a real immersive world within a 4X space strategy game. It doesn't feel as abstracted as some 4X games do. It feels like you're right within your realm, and that is something I really, really enjoy. You don't have linear space travel like in some games where you would have a linear path between the different planets and between the different systems. You do not have that in Distant Worlds 2. They can fly wherever. Now, there are linear paths here, but you don't see them. It's not something where you go, okay, we're going to go to this specific point in our system or within the galaxy. It feels more organic, natural, and real, and that is something that I love about this game, is just the immersive aspect of it. Now, of course, not everything is perfect within the game. This is a preview beta build. I've said that now a few times, but what are some of the things that I wish would be better? One, pirate spam. In the early game, pirates show up all the time, and it can absolutely tank your economy and your growth prospects. So that needs to be tweaked, but you can also tweak the frequency of pirates and their aggression in the settings. So maybe tweak that down, or leave it as standard and kind of see how the game reacts to piracy. If it's a massive spawn and you're dealing with 5-6 factions, while you haven't even gotten to the next level of hyperdrive warp speed, then you'll need to tone it down, but we'll see what happens upon release. The other thing is some of these pop-ups are a little bit fast, and some of the messages that pop up here on the side, it's a little too fluid, so to speak. You just pop through the different messages too quickly, so a little bit slower there I think would help. The other part that I just didn't understand is honestly colonization. If we look at colonies here, we found one that's outside of our system. Now, we have a 43% suitability on our home planet. Now, within our system, we actually found other planets that are more suitable, like this one at 45%. But we cannot send a colony ship here manually to say we want to colonize this planet. Instead, we get a filter of anything that we can here, and this is a very small chance of getting this one. In fact, it's 0% chance because it's already inhabited. And so we are limited as far as what we can do in terms of colonization. We have to go far too far away. This planet is all the way over here. But we would have within our system, actually, I think there was another planet in here with the same suitability as our home planet. So for me, it was just not logical to not be able to hand select planets to colonize. I think that is something that needs to be changed in the game. If they change that, this could be the perfect and best 4X strategy game. That is one of the more major hangups. The pirate spamming, like I said, you can adjust that in your settings. I'm not worried about that. The colonization, that is something that needs to be worked on and addressed, in my opinion. With so much customization as far as what you can automate or manually control, that is an aspect I think that definitely needs to be addressed. That even if it's not a very suitable planet, if I want to waste my time and resources in trying to colonize it, I should have that option to do so. And there you have my overall review of Distant Worlds 2, again based on a preview beta build. So what is my judgment of this game? I think it's absolutely fantastic. Naturally, people are going to compare it to Distant Worlds 1, the original one, and it's, from what I've seen without having played it, it looks better, it feels better. It's, you know, it's hard for me to judge this versus a game that's 12 years old. Odds are it's just better. Now, it'll obviously gain a lot of comparisons to Stellaris. In my opinion, that's unfair at this point. This is a new game, whereas Stellaris is an extraordinarily mature game with a ton of content. Stellaris in the beginning had some issues in the mid to late game. We'll have to wait and see how Distant Worlds 2 is in the mid to late game. It's too early to tell. There's not enough content there that I was able to review. In my opinion, the game is worth it. I kept on going back to it despite knowing I had limited beta content to use and play with. It's fun. I can't wait for the full launch of the game. If they address some of those little things, specifically colonization, then I think we've got an absolutely amazing 4X space strategy game. If you want to pre-order the game or buy it once it releases, there is a link to my Nexus GG store down in the comments where you can buy it, and then the funds or a percentage of the sale do go to the channel, to me, and help the content and the channel growth. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button and consider subscribing if you're new, because I will be featuring a Distant Worlds 2 playthrough, at least one in the future, probably more as I sink my teeth further into this game once it releases in March. So until next time, I am Realm Builder Guy, and I will talk to you soon.